So if you're, you're wanting to do international finance, international loans, they're the best for that. ICBC, well, they're probably the best Chinese bank.
I think up to now, the feedbacks, the best feedbacks are always from, they're from ICBC. Yeah, they're very flexible, open to ICBC.
Yeah. The only problem I do have is I get the calculator, like the mini device, to do the transactions online. And at the beginning, I couldn't log in online until a friend sent me basically a link that had the English page. So normally from the main page, you can't go into the English page, but through this link, you could. It's crazy.
The secret link.
Exactly.
The secret link.
Yeah. And suddenly I could go in English, but then, yeah, the transaction is a bit complicated with the calculator, and because of Chinese staff, I haven't been able to completely understand what the procedure is. So I just get to the point where, okay, I do this, and then I'm like, okay, now I don't know what to do.
And yeah, if you have the problems with the Chinese banks, another solution is that when you open the bank accounts, you always have the account manager. So you don't, normally you're stuck at the counter of the banks, and you don't know what to do, but then just call that lady or that guy, then he can definitely help. Because for this person, it's internal communication instead of you talking to the people at the windows in the banks. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very complicated issue when you select the banks in China. You have to do a lot of comparing the fees, services, etc. to make the final decision. And also, transfer of your bank accounts from one bank to another bank is not that fast as you expected. Even within the same bank, it can cause you a lot of problems. At least you want to check all the documents when you open the bank accounts. So yeah, you have to take a lot of things into considerations when you open the bank accounts.
Yeah, I have a question about the transfer that you talked about. Yeah. All the people here in China said like you will never, you better avoid to make transactions to personal accounts. Like when you are dealing with Chinese company, they say, I can give you a discount, but if you pay me in my boss account number. They say like sometimes there are like cheaters or something like this, but I realized like in my experience like this month that I've been working in this field of trading, 70–80% of the cases they always offer me this choice, like pay me in my personal account, but if you pay me in my corporate account, I have to raise my price. So I don't know what are the implications, because in a sense it's illegal because you are like avoiding some taxes. Yeah. So I don't know which
problem.
I think it's the same. I think probably it's the same implications in China.
But this is normal. It's a normal practice that the people.
Well, it depends on the circumstance. It could be just blatant tax avoidance. It might be just that. Or it could, if it's involving foreign currency in any way. If you're paying, let's say, US dollars, or because sometimes personal accounts can process foreign exchange, whereas corporate accounts can't. So it really depends. But yeah, remember, again, this is a big Chinese culture thing. Personal life, business life is mixed up. There's no separation like maybe the more developed nations do, where we have business over here, personal over here. Very big wall between the two. In China, it's very much mixed. Okay, and we have problems with mixture of assets. These are company assets. These are my personal assets, and they get mixed up. We have things like money going into that account and that account, but they're all the same because I'm the owner. This kind of thing. And there's a lot of Westerners or more developed countries don't appreciate that there is virtually no separation between business life and your personal life here. And there's sort of cultural implications of this and reasons for this which are quite interesting. But I think it's very important to know that we don't have that. The Chinese don't have that distinction, quite frankly.
Something that really happens in China is that, and actually this happens also in Europe and the United States, but it's not happening in our countries. The law and the governments in our countries, they don't care that much about what you want. So they don't track all your transactions. You can just make a deposit from whatever account in the world to your personal account in Colombia or in Ecuador, and they are not going to track. And that is bad, actually. But what happens in Europe and in the United States, and also happens in China, is that you cannot make a transaction from a personal account to a corporate account, or from a corporate account to a personal account. They don't allow you to do that. Not even here, not even outside. If you transfer that money from a corporate account from China to a personal account outside, they are going to stop that transaction. But if you do that to Ecuador or to Colombia, they are not going to stop that. Yeah, and that is just to avoid wash money in case that you are selling or buying illegal stuff.
And also from the legal perspective, transferring money from a company to a personal account is quite risky. I mean, because sometimes you're just facing the salesperson instead of the owner of the company. So if you transfer to his personal account, it's risky for the money.
You've got to also appreciate that the financial system, the way business is done here is very different to elsewhere, and that the company itself, the Chinese company you're dealing with, may have dealings with a bank for loans and giving mortgages, whereas the guy that owns it, the shareholder, the business guy, he's also done dealings with grey banks, under the table finance, because basically it's very difficult for small business and medium business owners here to get finance. So he's basically trying to juggle his loans and juggle his repayments. So money flowing rather than to his company but to his personal account can get paid off down the bottom here. There's this total mixture of what's going on, and that can cause issues about who am I dealing with, where's my, particularly if you're putting deposits down and things like this, who are, and we could talk for hours about how do we, and we're looking at some case studies later about what happens when the contract goes bad and you're tracing your money down. And you paid it to him directly, or if you paid it to the company, all this sort of stuff. So this causes let me assure you, causes enormous problems trying to track down who where the money, who owes you the money, all this sort of stuff. So we'll have a look at that. I think in a bit.
Okay. After the banks, I want to talk about the special relationship agents. I think you might have already heard about this kind of agents in China. So have you ever used one before when dealing with the government?
Fixers. People who know someone.
Yeah, they claim like, oh, I know someone from the government. Yeah. I can help you.
Well, my boyfriend's company, when they deal with the bureau, like for the visas, they hire a company that only specializes in that. So basically, yeah, they know people in there somehow.
Yeah,
and they know how to deal. So you pay them a fee.
But mostly for this kind of companies, also for us, we assist our clients with these applications. They just deal with the procedures, like normal, help the customers, help the clients go through normal legal procedures to get the visa. They claim they know someone from the government authorities, but actually I think 70%, 80% of them, they're just like help you to deal with the procedures in a normal way. And maybe they're very experienced. Mm-hmm. That's why they can make the procedure go really fast and make you prepare the documents very fast without any mistake. But I think they still do this in the legal way. You just pay the service fee to take care of the procedures. And but there are indeed some agents existing for like this kind of special relationship agents. And normally these kind of agents, they are affiliated to the government authorities. So it's still, I think it's a communication channel for foreign investors to talk to government authorities, so you can see how their attitudes towards your investments in China. But by engaging a special relationship agents, you always have to considering the bribery issues for foreign companies. And in China, in the criminal law, there's a definition for bribery. Actually, we've only got the definition for direct bribery. That means if you want to get something, if you want to make something happen, if you want to accelerate something, you give something to the government authority, and he does this for you, and that is going to be considered as bribery. But what about the indirect bribery? For example, you just maintain a very good relationship with the government authority. For example, inviting him or her out for dinners and buying him or her presents regularly, but you don't ask for anything. But eventually, someday, maybe 3 months later, 6 months later, 1 year, you realize you've got a problem, and you ask for something from the government authority, is it going to be considered as a bribery in China? It's a very big argument for a criminal law. The definition for bribery is very narrow in China, so maybe it works different in Ecuador or in some other countries.
Does Ecuador have a bribery act? No, that's US and UK have quite wide bribery definitions, both direct and indirect. And of course, it's the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, in the US is the big ticket thing at the moment. I mean, the Justice Department in the US are cracking down on this heavily. UK not so much, Europe a little bit more or less, but it's very wide. But I think this is a big issue. I mean, you've been reading the papers about Glaxo, the big pharmaceutical companies, being hauled over the coals at the moment. Now, the thing about the pharmaceutical industry, the big dirty secret in China, is that everybody bribes everybody. At every level, it's bribery. So why GSK have been singled out, maybe just the Chinese government posturing, and just a sort of a show trial in that sense. But it just shows you what is common practice in China, common practice in one industry totally, that someone can be singled out for it very much so, very easily. That's a good example of what is, I think they were doing direct bribery, indirect bribery at every level there. So,
and also, the reason for China to keep a very narrow definition for bribery, up to now there's still people, they were trying to suggest to the legislators to change the definition in the law, but still it's like that because it's also the Chinese business culture thing. Like it's been existing, buying, giving presents for doing something. It's been existing in China, maintaining good relationship.
Cultural, right?
Yes, cultural.
Business anymore. They manage their families in that.
Yeah, that's why it's just a Chinese thing. If you make it very strict, I think probably it's going to cause more problems in China. So, but anyway, a lot of companies, foreign invested multinational companies, they also have very strict anti-bribery policies within the company. So when you want to use this kind of special agents, first to be selective. If they're just they can just be the ones who are very familiar with the procedures, who are very experienced with this kind of procedures, but they can also be someone who will be involved in bribery issues, and also just be selective and be aware of these issues when you use these kind of special agents. Yeah, so basically that's the first topic I want to talk about. Any more questions regarding the government authorities? And and according to our experience, I've summarized some of the tips might be useful for you, for your China business in the future. The question is like, nothing is impossible in China. Is that correct?
Under which perspective?
Yeah, but still you can try to make it happen, I think. The first one, the first principle, maybe you think it's not really possible to operate legally in China, but still the principle of the company is that we have to operate legally. We have to fulfill all the compliance, we have to follow the laws and regulations. So we try to avoid the gray areas or the illegal matters. And also for the government authorities, China is very big. We have the national laws and regulations, but for each city, each province, or even each district, they have their own implementing rules. So sometimes the requirements in the cities, in the districts, can be higher than the requirements in the national laws and regulations. So in these kind of situations, what are you going to do? For example, in the law, it says you only have to have this document, you can do this. But so if you go to maybe Huangpu district, they ask you for 3 documents. Of course, you can argue, and you say, like, please provide me the legal grounds for doing this. But normally, the answers you would get from the officials will be, oh, it's our internal rules. We cannot disclose to the public, so you can't do nothing. That's why I think maybe you just follow their rules in order to be very efficient. And just be flexible sometimes. And the third point is that maintain very frequent contact with the government officials who are dealing with your companies or supervising your companies. But it doesn't mean bribery. For example, you can have your accountant talk to the designated tax officer of your company frequently and see whether he's got any problems with your company. And also, before any changes of the alteration amendments on the companies, for example, equity transfer, relocation, change of the investment, etc. Always send your people going to talk to the government officials and see their attitudes towards your amendment, towards your changes of the company. So you get to know how they think of this. That I think is going to help you proceed smoothly in the future.
In this case, what happens with the, let's say, customs? Do they work in the same way? Do they like assign somebody special?
Yeah, unless you have, I think for customs issues, unless you have very experienced employees to deal with the custom issues, we always suggest our client to find a good import and export agent to deal with this
You
complications.
never do it yourself.
Yeah,
Never
if you do
try.
it yourself, you bring yourself a lot of trouble in the future. So, because for import and export agents, I think they deal with a bunch of customers, people at the same time very frequently, so they can definitely help.
So they
maybe have to
maintain,
pay the commission.
they are the ones who maintain frequent
Yeah,
contact
contact.
with. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, what goes on in customs is a world unto itself, quite frankly. No one really knows why and how, and except for these very connected customs agents who are basically ex-customs officers, I think. And who knows what goes on, but if you're a smaller operation, it's don't do any importing or exporting yourself. We see enormous problems with people trying to do this. Stuff getting left on the docks for months and months. I mean, but even the big companies get caught on this. I mean, there's been a big dispute going on with a very large New Zealand milk company, and they've had stuff sitting on the docks for 7 months now. It can't be resolved. I mean, it's become an impasse. The other issue I think here is when you're dealing with government officials, and I don't want to talk too much about the concept of face here, but I mean trying to leap over your officer to his superior can be very dangerous because you're actually making the junior officer lose face there. Right? Do you want to make any comments on that? Oh, you're going to do so?
The next one I'm going to
I
talk
thought we
about.
wouldn't get away without talking about face.
Yeah, and also, actually for a lot of government officials, sometimes they do not very good education. Some of them, they're just local people, and maybe they've never been to law schools before, they've never studied accounting or taxation before in China. They just took power after maybe 2 months, 3 months training, internal training by the government authorities. So sometimes you can even try to lecture them, educate them, to make them understand what you are trying to achieve. And this works sometimes. And also get the right staff to talk to the government authority officials. And maybe sometimes people who, like for example in Shanghai, most of the government officials, they are local people. If you get someone who can speak Shanghainese to go and talk to them, which can help lots actually. And also good communication skills. Yeah, and good communication skills. And some different people definitely have different consequences after they talk to the same official. So make sure you find a smart one to go to talk to them.
The other thing we often see is that the Western boss or the Laowai will demand, I demand to go and see the customs official, I demand to go and see that government official, and they think that they will be able to talk it through with them. And quite frankly, it's the most counterproductive thing ever. So you see that the American CEO is sitting there, like, lecturing, on business, lecturing the Chinese official, and of course that does more damage than good. Because that sort of thing would happen in the West. I mean, you'd be able to have a chat. Here, not at all. I mean, so don't fall into that trap that you can have a nice, cozy chat. Always get this right person.
If you have if you go with a Chinese staff and with a friendly foreign face, it can also help.
Yeah.
Because
If you've got a major dispute, let's say a tax dispute or a major government environmental dispute, flying people over from head office is always a very good trick actually. Bring in the bosses from overseas. That always helps quite a bit. It gives face to the Chinese officials that you've actually flown over. So we have to resort to bring over head office people to actually deal even with minor stuff, to smooth it out. So the big gesture can become a very important thing also.
And the government official, they'll think that they are taken very seriously by the companies, and then they're happy. Next point, which is mentioned, talk to the superiors, but that doesn't mean you can ignore the junior people, the junior officials. how it works in the government authorities, like the people you talk to, they're the junior ones. And within the government authority, each person has to be responsible for their decisions. So sometimes maybe it's indeed a very difficult issue, maybe he's not able to solve the problem, so he would just say, no, I don't want to deal with this, so you can't do this. But it's also because he doesn't take the liability hereof. So at this moment, in a very friendly way, if you can propose, can I talk to your superior with you so we can try to solve the problem, and it can work, because this person can just shift his liability to someone else, and he'll be happy to do this. But like Richard said, don't try to avoid this person. Then he'll feel that he's losing face in front of his superior. So you have to basically make both the junior and the senior people happy. And the last one is when you deal with them, they're very strict, but sometimes it's just if you can order some alternatives to them, they can also give you another solution. For example, if they insist on one document from the headquarters, but it's very difficult for you to obtain this. For them, they never seen any document from a foreign company. If you can say, if I provide another document plus a guarantee from the company, can this work? And in most of the cases, they will say yes. You just have to make sure that they are very, very assured of this kind of the documents you provide, of the solutions you provide, then they will still accept it. And there are also some other suggestions, tips when dealing with Chinese government authorities, and which depends on in what kind of situations you are. Yeah. Okay, now we can. Any questions about the Chinese government authority? It's a little bit longer than I expected. Yeah, the second one is about how to deal with Chinese suppliers and customers. I think I've had already, there are some discussions going on before the presentation. And actually for our legal department, we deal with the papers. We deal with the contracts, purchase contracts, sales agreements, etc. And for this topic, I actually discussed with one of our Spanish clients, and he's the sales director and also sourcing director for a Spanish company for more than 15 years in China. So that he also made some contribution to the slides, which are quite practical in my opinion. The first one is about international standard do not always apply. When you're fresh to China, you always bring the standard from your countries or from or international standard to China, and then you realize that you do not actually work in China for the Chinese suppliers. So don't get upset or don't get disappointed. What you have to do is just to adjust to your standard, be the coordination between the headquarters or the customers overseas with the Chinese suppliers. And during the negotiation stage, the Chinese suppliers, no matter what you say, they will always say, yes, I can do this. No problem, I can do this. Yeah, we would just strongly recommend that you go to his factory and see whether they can do this. Maybe he's only got an office because he subcontract everything to someone else, and then someone else subcontract to someone else. So you never know how they do this. So just go and see whether you have the technical capacity to do this kind of, or to perform this kind of orders for your headquarters or for your customers overseas. And yeah, a lot of foreign companies, when they come to China, they come with expectation of good quality and low price. But I think you always have to bear that on your mind. Do not squeeze your suppliers too much. Because if you squeeze them too much, they'll reduce the quality without even informing you. Everything has a price in China. It's cheap, but it's still got a price. And the next point is about the orders you're giving to the suppliers. During the negotiations, I think most of the time you're just dealing with the salespeople who might not have a lot of technical background. So we would suggest that in the orders, you be very clear, you be very specific, because after they take this order, they'll just forward it to the technical people, to the factories. If when forwarding the information from you to the manufacturing people, if it's not clear, you might get problems. And for example, and you also have to know, in China, if you want to claim remedies from the Chinese suppliers, it's extremely difficult. Normally in practice, for example, if you order red pencils from the suppliers, but eventually they deliver yellow pencils, and for you, you just want to return all the goods and get the refund, full refund plus compensation. But I think it doesn't work for the Chinese suppliers. They'll say, just take the red pencils, I give you a discount on this order. I give you other discounts on the following orders, but I don't give the money back to you. So it's difficult to claim the full amount back. And you have to, and also the liability for this kind of mistake made by the Chinese suppliers, they will lie on the Chinese they will lie on the importers, which is you. So you have to bear. Your customers or your overseas are not going to take any liability. They'll just blame you. So you will be the person who's going to be blamed for. And the next point is that, in China, I don't know whether you've already started dealing with Chinese suppliers. When you meet them, after meetings, they always bring you for dinner, or maybe karaoke, entertainment, or even give you presents. So what are you going to do with the presents? And are you going to sacrifice the products because of the presents, because of your entertainment? That's a very important thing for you when you purchase from China. Actually, one of our clients, they've got a very interesting rule. The salespeople, no matter foreigners or Chinese, the purchase people, no matter foreigners or Chinese, when they buy from the Chinese suppliers, inevitably they get presents. And sometimes if you refuse the presents, the Chinese suppliers can get really offended. They're not very happy. So what are they going to do? They just, every time when they receive some presents, they just report to the company. They hand the presents to the company, and the company collects all the presents from the suppliers, and maybe in the annual dinner of the company, the presents can be awarded for lucky draw for all the employees, which can also save some money for the company. It's one of the solutions to this kind of problems. Yeah.
So, really, really strong thing. Many foreign companies have rules, internal rules, that don't accept presents from the customers or from the suppliers.
Yeah.
And sometimes those presents are very, very high, and like an envelope or immaterial things. And this is what you say, what you do, or just collect the most of them, what they get in 1 month, and offer to a school in a small town would have a project and something, and then give it to them.
Just make sure you report to the company, make the company aware of what you are getting from the suppliers. If you just take them by yourself, I think eventually somebody's going to find out.
And it really depends upon company culture. I mean, a lot of companies have very different culture. I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of the US companies now have an absolute no presence policy, no bribery policy, or quite harshly. Whereas other Europeans tend to be a bit more, Southern Europeans tend to be a bit more loose with it. The Northern Europeans, the Germans are very strict also.
Yeah.
A lot depends upon what you're trying to achieve, and what who you're dealing with. I mean, there's a little bit of flexibility here, but I mean, if you're dealing with a big purchasing department, and you have maybe a lot of Chinese and foreign employees there, you've really got to set down some guidelines. Basically a no presence policy in there, because it will be, if you set down guidelines, the Chinese staff tend to follow them. It's got to be always looked at. But if you have no guidelines, there might be just an informal, then it'll be flouted in that sense, And I mean, the interesting thing is what does it buy anyway? You're hoping maybe to develop a relationship, some guanxi, some loyalty, but quite frankly, I mean, what we see is there's really, you're never going, as a foreign buyer, as a foreign company, you're never going to establish that much guanxi. Never. I mean, don't no matter what you think, the relationship you form is not going to be that strong. There's no loyalty in Chinese business. It's just business. The guanxi element, maybe you want to comment on this, is really about Chinese people. It doesn't really involve foreigners at all.
Yeah,
You know,
it's to front, especially the foreigners.
exactly. I mean, China is a very insular society, as you probably found out. It's all about the Chinese. Sorry, the Chinese people sitting in the room here. Like me making some terrible generalizations here. But this is my observations. I mean, no matter how deeply involved you are in business, I mean, there's a certain amount of business loyalty, but basically none in the end. So you've got to start asking yourself, well, yes, all this present giving, all this, you know, what does it actually achieve in the end? I mean, a lot of it is just to smooth the initial relationship, but as far as a long-term thing, you've got to question whether it actually does achieve what you think it's trying to achieve. I don't know, what do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think, I mean, no matter in China or out of China, the Chinese community is always very closed. It's very isolated from other communities. So the relationship within the community is very strong. You can see, like in China, everyone's connected with everyone. But for foreigners, because they don't have confidence with foreigners, it's true. I mean, not absolutely. We don't know what's going to happen with this foreigner in the future. That's why we do not 100% trust the foreigners in China. That's why.
50% trust. 50%
it's
trust.
improving.
It's improved.
So because it's not like for Chinese people you stay here forever. I know you, I know your family, but for foreigners it's too difficult.
But I think that's why it's really important also for them to know your family. I've been doing trading also for some time now, and I had some clients come into town, but they were actually family, like my boyfriend's family. And when we went to each supplier and get to meet them and see the factories and see the product, they were, they became a little more acquainted, open for the fact that now they knew a generation basically. So it was his grandfather, his aunt, him.
Okay.
So basically they have a family.
That's pretty unusual for
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but they like that. They like knowing, going more personal. So they like knowing about where you're coming from, who is who, where are you,
Are you
why
married?
are
How
you?
much money do you make?
Yes, all questions. And they're open. And I'm an open mouth, so it's like basically they get to know it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the bottom line is that you do not replace the products with this kind of relationship. It's true. I mean, the products you are purchasing in China, they are the most important thing.
The other thing on just this supply contract stuff is be constantly vigilant. I mean, you've done the hard negotiation. You've got the product specifications down pat, and after many proper sample runs and things like that. But unless you keep up the vigilance every monthly, quarterly, you know, the thing's going to be, the standard's going to slip also. I mean, if you're really going to have, and you probably know this already, but you've got to have that QCP people almost living in the factory, you know, or at least visiting that factory every month or every couple of weeks. I mean, because the quality will slip in this, in that sense. Because and this is the big issue. We'll talk a little bit about contracts in a moment. But whereas the Western or more developed world's approach to a contract is that this is the final deal, a Chinese approach is very different, which is this is the start of our deal, and it's all negotiable and anything can change, and I can change it at will as my circumstances change, and I don't need to tell you, or I can tell you. So everything is changeable, and this is why we have this constant problem with Chinese businesses where they're just changing the deal on us all the time, and we sit there going, well, hold on, we made the deal. And they go, well, no, the deal's changed. So it's a totally different approach to business, which is the fundamental difference, I think, coming in. So vigilance, it's a relationship, not a deal to them.
That's the reason why you are not doing litigation.
Sorry?
Yeah, no, exactly. We don't get involved in litigation whatsoever. Because you get caught one end, you get caught the other. I mean, it's also a losing proposition in China. I mean, litigation in China is probably the most zero-sum game there is in the world. We'll talk about that.
And also, just like Richard mentioned, actually I also talk about the Chinese customers. Maybe you can you can sign a contract very quickly, within 1 or 2 days, not talking too much about the details. But eventually the Chinese suppliers or customer, they'll come back to you. I want to change here, let's talk about this, let's make an amendment. So they change all the time. And also, Rich also just mentioned for quality control issues, you give them the order, you provide very detailed specifications, instructions, but still, during the whole process of manufacturing and also exporting, you have to send your people on the ground to supervise. And even before the shipment, you still have to check whether this is the goods I want. Because as long as you're shipped overseas, if you want to return them back to China, it's a big trouble. And it's going to cost you a lot of money. And yeah, quality certificates. We also just discussed it before the presentation. Never trusted them. Yeah, they can just use a very
cheap
Photoshop
Cheap,
software.
cheap,
Yeah, change something, change the name of the certificate. Even kid can tell it's a fake certification. They just send it to you. So never check. Even they have the real certification, but you still have to make sure the products, every single product they fulfill with the certificates, the standard of the certificates. So it's related to the quality control issue. You just check at any time when you purchase. And also intellectual property rights issues. When you purchase from China, so you have to make sure that the products you buy from China, they do not infringe any intellectual property rights of any third party. Because this product can just be copied from someone else. You don't even know. You think, oh, it's a very good product, cheap. But you're copying other people's design, other people's technologies. If they do not disclose this information to you, this can bring you into very serious trouble in the future. If, for example, for patent dispute, trademark dispute, if you use an industrial design dispute. So, yeah, I mean, you can be sued by that party by using their products. And of course, you can claim back the damages in the future, but it's another process which can cost you forever and a lot of money. And also each order, it's a fresh start. Do not take everything for granted. So the price has to be negotiated for each order. The instructions have to be given again for each order, because and also the negotiation is always open. And the last one for the last, also not the least, for suppliers in China, for purchasing from China, is the bribery issue. So it's illegal, and I think you always have to bear that. You can have some flexibility, depends on your company's rules, policies, but still it's illegal. I've got a case study here. It's actually one of our Italian clients. They are facing this problem. It's an Italian company, very big Italian company for inox, and they purchased 3,000 meters of industrial pipes from a Chinese supplier and installed them in a project in Germany. And the pipes, they leak and caused damages to part of the project, and the estimated damages about 500,000 euros to the German company, and it's much less than the value of the pipes they purchased from the Chinese suppliers. And the Italians were sued by the Germans in Italy, and the court procedures in Italy, the Germans, they claimed it's because of the quality of the pipes which caused the damages to the whole project. But the Italians said, no, it's not the quality of the pipes. It's a problem of the engineers. They do not install them in the proper way. So it's a dispute between the Italian company and the German company in Italy. So they're not sure whether they have to pay compensation to this German company, because they are arguing on which caused the damages. And this court procedure in Italy can take about 2 to 3 years' time. And so what are you going to do now with the Chinese suppliers? Can you do anything?
I have one question. You said that finally in the quality certificate of the pipes provided that the Chinese supplier was responsible. Actually,
yeah,
there was a fake quality certificate probably.
Yeah.
How are you going to deal with that?
Oh, you mean for the previous slide?
I mean, with the supplier. I mean,
Yeah.
if the supplier gives you a fake quality certificate,
first, I think you can always check the certificate, whether it's a real one or it's a fake one.
So you have to go to the office to
Yeah.
issue the certificate.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Check.
Sometimes.
You have to.
They have a code and you call
Yep.
them and they can track it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like
the
you
way
can
that I
check
have-
fapials to see whether they're real. Yeah, you can actually go online and check to see whether a fapial has actually really been issued. That's what, yeah. So you know, because there's a lot of fake fapials everywhere. But I mean, you've actually got to go back and check, the authenticity, which is a hassle. quite
You
frankly.
send them the copy of the same certificate that they send you over. They say this is original, this is not original. But I have a question, because like you said, some of them they have like a original certificates. They have a really nice website. They have everything pretty nice. But there is any way to check like the license are real, like the company is like a real.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
How I have no.
Quite simple.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the all the information of these licenses, they're open to public. You can always check with the government authorities, different ones, depends on which one issue the certificates. You can always check.
So I mean, there's a number of different
A
levels
website
you
or
can work out. I mean,
pay them a visit.
if you want to see whether a company exists, it actually is legally existing, is public websites. I mean,
Yep.
it's all in Chinese, of course, but you just search the information, basically. I mean, usually you can do it through a law firm or anything like that. I mean, we do a lot of this stuff. So there's basic information to see whether the company's real, where it really is, this sort of stuff. Then you get to next layers. Once you start doing, there's no real people like credit reporting agencies here, Dun and Bradstreet, or you can't do a credit report. But you can do sort of informal ones. So, for example, you could come to us and say, we want to check out this potential supplier in Unway, and we'd go, okay, you can get a basic report, you can get an in-depth, or you can get a big credit report. And that's basically almost like getting a private investigator to actually go and search around, in that city. They're not that expensive. For a basic thing, is maybe 1,000 kwai,
Yeah.
and it gets progressively more expensive depending on it. Finding information about companies is not that difficult. The biggest problem is finding information about individuals, because there's no basically national database here of people. There's no national identification cards. Everyone's got the same name, no disrespect. A lot of people have the same name here. And so you've actually got to go to the hometown of the person you're trying to investigate and get the information there. Start there and then move outwards. So if you're trying to find, let's say, the name of Victor Zheng in Shanghai, it's going to be very difficult, because there's going to be a lot of, well, there won't be many Victor Zhengs, but there'll be his name. But if you go to Hangzhou, then you'd start searching for information on him and then following his trail to Shanghai. But very difficult on individuals, not so difficult on companies. Okay?
Yeah.
But it's worth doing, quite frankly, because there are a lot of fake websites, a lot of fake business licenses, a lot of fake.
For us in the consulate,
Yeah.
ask them for a birth certificate.
Right.
It's really complicated. They don't even know how to do
No,
it.
and then this is
And it
yeah,
takes a
right.
really long time for them, like a week
Yeah.
to get that.
Or prove where you got your money from. The other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also we were engaged by some of our customers to do due diligence investigation on their suppliers before the purchase, for the really big orders. Back to this case study. Basically the Italians have to wait for the court judgment in Italy to see whether they are going to be liable for the damages. But if they are going to be held, if they are going to be held liable for the damages, what are they going to do with the China suppliers? So there are two issues here you have to pay attention to. Is that the court procedure in Europe, in Italy, they can be quite long, 2 to 3 years time. But there's in China, for the international sales contract or for the domestic Chinese sales contract, there's going to be the statute of actions. That means a limitation, also can be called limitation of actions. That means if you realize they've caused damages to you, there's a time limit for you to claim for the damages. If within this time limit you don't claim, then you cannot claim anymore. And in China, if it's domestic sales, for example, if you sell from China suppliers to the trading company in China, it's 2 years. So you have to claim in 2 years' time. If it's international sales, you're selling from China suppliers to foreign companies directly, it's 4 years' time. So you have to make sure you're not going to pass the deadline. And of course, you can do some action to interrupt this period. And yeah, and also another issue is that if eventually if the Italian company is going to be held liable for the damages, they have to pay the Germans, and they are going to claim remedies from the Chinese suppliers within the period. Let's assume, but it's a very difficult procedures in China. They will not the Chinese suppliers mostly they will not cooperate, so you have to bring the case to a court in China. And if you are involved in the court procedures, then it's going to be very long. And I think all the foreign investors or companies will try to avoid this from taking place.
I think in this situation, in the end, it was to basically, I think the Italians were held liable, weren't they?
No, they're still waiting for
They're
the
still waiting,
judgment.
right? But there's basically the advice has been from China, law firms here, is that they won't have an action against the Chinese supplier.
It's difficult. Yeah.
Because it's been out of time, and also it's just too difficult. Just, I mean, you've got to, number one, find a court that will take the case. A lot of courts just say, well, no, we don't take the case, particularly if foreigners are involved. Secondly, you're probably not going to win against a Chinese company. So legal action in China is probably not the best thing.
Yeah, even the cases taken by the courts in China is just too complicated. You have to spend a lot of energy to deal with this, providing evidence. And,
very expensive too.
Yeah, very expensive too. So sometimes if the damage is not that substantial, they'll just give it up.
Remember also that the Chinese court system is not independent. It's actually a branch of the Communist Party. Okay? So, you know, and you use that whatever way you want, but they're not there's no independent justice system in that sense. So they're an extension, not of the government, an extension of the party, which means they can make their own rules. There's no laws that say they have to be independent. There's no laws that say they have to take a case. There's none of this like happens overseas in that sense. So it's a very different system, and you can't rely upon it. Chinese can't even rely upon it, let alone Westerners.
Okay, then this one's about the customers. Might be a little bit different, and for Chinese customers, if they come to a foreign company for purchasing, they're expecting either some technologies they do not have, or they're expecting some products with higher qualities. If they want cheap things, they don't go to foreigners, they go to Chinese. And so before you enter the China market, first you have to make a very clear strategy and do a market research, and to figure out where the customers, where do they locate, and how much do they need of your products. And also, I wouldn't say that Chinese customers are the most demanding customers in the world, but definitely they are one of the most demanding customers in the world. I mean, they ask for a lot during the negotiations for the contracts, and also afterwards, after you sign the contracts, after you ship the products, they will still asking for maintenance services, after-sales services, value-added services. So they are asking all the time. They're very demanding. And also, as I've just mentioned in the previous slides, China is a very big powerhouse. Basically, you can find whatever you want in China. So why are they looking at a foreign option? There must be some reason. So you always have to weight yourself with the Chinese companies, with your Chinese counterparts, and see what your advantages are. So when you're promoting your products, you have to emphasize on your advantages comparing with your Chinese competitors. And also, if you want to sell in China, definitely you have to have local people who speak the language. Maybe the Chinese customers at the very beginning, they are very happy to talk to the foreigners, but most of the time, eventually the person who nailed the deal is the Chinese people. So still, it's back to that topic, Chinese people, I think they trust each other more. And for fresh companies to China, if you want to sell your products, it might be a good idea if you can find some distributors which have been existing for this industry for many years. They also have their sales channels. They know the end customers very well. So if you cooperate with them, you can save a lot of energy and time for developing your China market. And yeah, this one I think we've already discussed before. Chinese customers, they are very they're very used to changing terms and conditions of the contracts. You sign the contract very quickly. You start selling to China, but eventually they'll ask you to change here there, everywhere eventually. Maybe. Sorry. And yeah, this one is also related to the presents thing. If you sell to Chinese customers, they're expecting presents from you sometimes. So what are you going to do? If you don't offer the salespeople presents, maybe you cannot get a deal. So it's quite difficult for the foreign companies if you want to sell in China. Some companies, they make compromises, but within a very reasonable scope. Not going too far, but still they follow the Chinese rules. And in China, for sales, probably you have to talk to different people. First, maybe it's a junior employee of the company. He's just the person maybe who can speak very good English, and he's the bridge between the big boss and the foreign company. And of course, just like the government officials, you cannot completely avoid this person, or he's going to make you trouble eventually if you don't respect him. But also, you should try to talk to the real decision maker by involving this person. It's going to be faster for the decision making, and also it's going to be for some substantial points in the contract. You can just talk to this person and reach the final deal. And also
very difficult to identify the real decision makers sometimes. And this is why, you're looking at a room in a negotiation and you're dealing with some people there, but the quietest guy on the end at the back will actually be the room. And I was in a meeting last week. We were in a joint venture breakdown, and we were trying to identify who was the top guy there. And it was actually, there was a talking guy, and we kept, someone said, no, the guy at the back there, he's the real guy. So yeah, very difficult to find this out, quite frankly.
And if possible, just before the meetings, get your Chinese staff to do some research to find out who's actually the ultimate decision maker for this deal. The next point, I think, is the IP issue. I mean, if you sell to China, very high-tech products, maybe never underestimate Chinese people's capacity of creation. So maybe
get samples.
Yeah, maybe you just get your samples. In a few years' time, you can find very identical products in the China market already. So make sure your intellectual property rights, patent, trademark, they are very protected before you enter the China market.
But even that doesn't really get you anywhere.
Yes, true.
Quite frankly.
They can do this. That is just another procedure. You claim for damages.
What we say to clients is if your business model in China, if IP is the centre of that, and the whole business model relies upon one bit of IP, don't do it. Quite simple. I mean, you've got about 2 years maximum before someone's going to take it. Okay. So what the big guys are doing now is that they're releasing just not the top IP, but their second generation stuff, and basically giving it away. So you're always constantly updating your IP here. So you're always 1 year ahead of the deal. But if that IP is worth $1 billion, don't do it. So.
And also, each order is fresh, so always open to discussion, negotiations with Chinese customers. And the last one is about the payment. In China, don't be surprised if they don't pay on time. It's quite common. Delays on the payment, so just be patient.
90 days is the norm here. 90 days, which could cause big cash flow problems. You're just opening up a company here and you're trading, you're supplying to Chinese here, or you're exporting, and you're thinly capitalised, you're low capitalisation, and you're relying upon that cash flow coming in, causes enormous problems for smaller foreign companies here because of these delays. Because you're expecting that big money coming in, and it's just delayed. And the problem here is that you're going to go bankrupt within 2 months. You've got no money, and you can't ring up headquarters and say, send more money. Because headquarters just can't send in more US dollars or whatever, because it's going to take you 2 to 3 months to get approval for that money to come in. And 2 to 3 months you ain't got. You'll go bankrupt here. And there's no bankruptcy protection laws here. You're dead. And it can happen that quickly, quite frankly. And this is why one of the biggest issues is working out your cash flows, factoring into your cash flow statements these delays. 60, 90, 120 days, no problems. And making sure you've got enough capital to support you during that period. Okay, very important stuff. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
This question. Okay, maybe from company to company, from business to business, completely different. I work in the completely different area. I do tourism, and we always talk about to talk with the right person. In the case we have to take representative for the company to make we call farm trips. Take the representative, very important person from the company to enter the country, to show all the country, give pay the cruise ship, hotels, bars, and everything. We have to take the good one. We can make decision at the end. So we have to really recognize which one is exactly the one. Not the one just some for roles and then here no decision to sign an agreement to say, okay, this I can't sign this, and from now we're going to be partners. And the payment as well. Rules are different. Normal, how many is the normal standard of time that the Chinese in advance make bank transfers to the company in order to pay something we're gonna give a service? Is this about 90 days or 50, 60, 70 days? Something. It's completely
as long
different.
as they can get away with it. 90 days, I'm seeing 90 days, quite frankly. Which is crazy. Absolutely crazy to run a business like that. But I mean, money's tight in China. Capital is really tight in China for Chinese companies. So the longer delay they have, the better. But I mean, the norm is 60, or the norm is 30, but it actually blows out to 90 quite often, quite frankly.
Because we tried to close a deal with a company here. It was okay. In order to receive the group, we need the 50% for the money, 60 days in advance, like it's 2 months.
In advance, okay.
No, too much. We don't pay that so much. We need our 40 days in our country inside the internal time in advance. If you want to make reservation for hotels or cruise ships inside, it's just 40 days. You cannot give it you. We need the money before, or we cannot do it.
Right.
It's something we have to deal here because the company didn't give you so many times. So just 60 days a maximum, 50 days, 60 days, something. This is a little very tight.
No, we deal with Trans Hotel, which is one of the biggest Spanish European travel. And they're grappling with this problem at the moment.
This
how to get paid up in advance by the Chinese travel agencies. And I think basically this is all new stuff.
That's absolutely the moment we are now in the tourist branch. People have a problem with the Chinese market because they don't like to pay so much time in advance, and you stop thinking because your local rules actually, I think you have to pay in advance things that are much.
I mean, of course, what's happening at the Chinese end is, of course, their customers are not paying them. So there's this sort of the chain stops. I mean, no one's willing to move first in that sense. So.
Okay.
I think LCs there rather than
last
CLs.
one is that for
LCs,
international transactions. I mean, like if it's possible, it's just a small tip. A tip you can use letter of credits, even more expensive, a little bit more expensive, but you get more guarantee.
What would the credit
Sure, letter.
Okay, so that's all about how to deal with the Chinese suppliers and the customers. If any questions, I'll just move on to the last topic. I'll just do it really quick. Joint venture partner. It's another step further. Like if you want to enter into, normally for some companies, they start trading first. After a few years, they think they trusted their Chinese partner. They think it's necessary. They've got such a market. They will think of entering into a joint venture with a Chinese partner. And for talking about joint ventures, there are a lot of things you can talk about. And what I want to talk about is that just the situations you may fall into deadlock with a Chinese partner during the negotiations of the joint venture agreement. I've made a summary. Basically, for this points, you have to discuss with your Chinese partner very carefully during negotiations. The first one you might not think is very important. The Chinese name register address of the JV, but actually in practice, it took them forever to decide on what the name is going to be used for the Chinese company or where we're going to set up the company. We've got a Dutch client before, and I thought foreigners do not really care about the Chinese name, but actually they do. They actually hired a fortune teller in Shanghai just to figure out some names for the Chinese company.
Really?
Yeah. And they spend a lot of money on this, and eventually the name cannot be approved by the Chinese government authority. So they're very angry with the Chinese partner for this kind of things. And also for the registered address, different parties have different considerations regarding the location of that